Welcome to the Register's editorial board. We're here today with State Senator Rick Bertrand.
Yeah.
Rick is running for the 4th District House seat held by Representative Steve King. I'm Lynn Hicks from the Des Moines Register, and we're going to start by having everyone present introduce themselves. Anna, go ahead.
Anna Backstrom, Politics Editor.
Carol Hunter, News Director.
Rika Bosfu, Columnist.
Emily Nash, Executive Editor.
David Shivers, President.
Brian Smith, Engagement Editor.
Kathy Abradovich, Political Columnist.
Bill Petrosky, Reporter.
Wait, well, thanks for coming today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We'll start off just very briefly. Why do you think we should endorse you for this position in primary?
You know what? I think because what I represent is what I think what represents the nation right now. I think it's where Iowans are at. I think people are ready for a change. They're ready for an outsider. They're ready for someone to bring fresh ideas. They're ready for Iowa and the 4th District not to be a polarizing district. And again, I think they're also they're ready for someone that is going to drive an Iowa agenda first. And I think that is really the simplicity of my campaign.
Okay. And when I looked at you, where you stand on the issues and what your priorities are, I didn't see anything on your website.
Sure.
So can you talk about what do you think are the biggest issues and where do you stand on it?
Well, I think the biggest thing right now is that we've got an economic opportunity in the 4th District. I think that people right now are tired of long-term politicians and they're ready to start going back to voting for their pocketbooks. I think right now that with all of the investment that's been made in the 4th District, with opportunities like the completion of Highway 20 and Highway 60 and the I-35 and the I-29 corridors popping, when you talk to business people, and I'm an economics person, when you talk to business people and ag leaders across the district, or even across the state, if we're going to grow Iowa economically, it's going to come from the 4th District. I think the focus needs to be on manufacturing. It needs to be on these new trade agreements that are coming in, things like the TPP agreement. And I think with the new president coming in, this election is going to be very, very simple. It's going to come down to a choice between not a conservative and a liberal or a Democrat or a Republican. It's going to come down to two people at two different places in their political, personal, and professional career. And I think Iowans are ready for that choice. And I think that I'm a reflection of what's going on nationwide.
But the things that are happening that you mentioned in the 4th District, including Highway 20, doesn't Representative King get some credit for making those things happen?
Well, I think, again, you got to go back to the reality of what's on the ground. I mean, I think that when you look at a proven record of results, I went there and when I went to Sioux City and I was the first Republican in 30 years to hold that seat, I went there with a clear Western Iowa agenda that wasn't shy about it. One of them was Highway 20. One of them was a targeted jobs program, which created equity with South Dakota and Nebraska. I went there to revitalize private capital investment in housing, not just Section 8 housing. So again, my record of results is something that, again, I went there not afraid to vote for results, not just to vote a resume. So, you know what, again, the congressman is at a different place in his career right now, and I don't think that anyone at this table or anyone can argue, if I get out into the field, can argue that the congressman is not running an Iowa agenda. He's lost his focus. I believe he's become a celebrity politician. Steve's gone Washington. It's not a slam, and again, I think that people think that this is me going after Congressman King. Congressman has to understand that at some point he realized this is not about him. This is about the future of the 4th District. And I think that we have a unique opportunity, a decade of opportunity for someone to go in there who believes in term limits, who believes in driving an agenda, has access to people, and are talking to people that see the opportunities we have, and to drive that agenda. It really is that simple.
What are some specifics in terms of how you think he's lost his focus?
I just think with the ag community. I mean, I think that's the flashpoint. That's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Again, the conversations have been had with cattlemen. I've been in the feedlots and in the ethanol plants and the biodiesels and even the manufacturer. And you look at when he first started. I was a supporter. We all were. And it came with great promise. And he had some success early in 2005 with the ethanol tax credit and the biodiesel. I mean, he did some things. That's what you get when you're a new representative. You're focused. You bring that agenda to the table. You have capital to play out in D.C. But over time, what happens is when you become comfortable in your district, there's no threat of a primary, and really at that point you start to lose focus of your constituents. So I think when people come to me and they ask, and the big things there is, I look at it as agriculture, as you know, is so important to the 4th District. We are the #1 agriculture district in the nation. We are almost a sovereign nation when it comes to agriculture. And people ask the questions in the agriculture community. It's very valid. After 14 years, and the most senior man on the Ag Committee, why isn't our congressman the chair of the Ag Committee? That's a legitimate question we should have there with the Farm Bill coming up in 2018 and some of the issues we're having with transportation in the ag community and things like that. again, these are things that, why was he bypassed? Why those things? Those are legitimate questions as a constituent that I ask. So I just think that when you get out there in the coffee shops and talk in the fields, people are just ready for a change. These are longtime supporters, not personal, but I think they're quietly going about their business, and we're going to make a change in the 4th District.
Are you getting any indication of support from the Republican establishment?
Well, go ahead and redefine that establishment.
Well, I haven't seen anybody
Yeah.
with an elected position that's endorsed you. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, you got David Johnson up in Osceola County, Megan Jones there.
Yeah.
You've got Ron Jorgensen. I mean, you go through county supervisors, those type of things. But you got to remember, as a grassroots campaign, my goal is not to go out and collect endorsements. That's what long-term politicians do. If you look at how Steve has rolled out his campaign, it's very typical of a long-term incumbent. You go out, you get upset, you're mad, you're insulted because someone's running against you. Then what you do is you run to elected officials. You pour out all your capital onto the table, you make your deals, you make your scares, you do all those things. And there's so much inside baseball that's going on here. You know that. With Kim Reynolds and Bill Northey and all that. There's so much inside baseball that's going on here that's so above this race, and it doesn't matter. So again, that's the first thing you do. The second thing you do is you go out into the community and you see, where's my support? I don't think he liked what he saw when it came to support. So then what you do is you try to find out, you are under Washington. So what's been coming at me and what's at the doorsteps and all these Washington now groups are coming out and running ads against me about how my pork project and Highway 20 and all these things. It didn't happen. Then what happens is then you run to Texas. You run to big PACs. And as you guys know, with this Reignite Iowa PAC that's been formed, it's the largest by Rick Tyler. It's the largest Texas donors out there, and they've made it very, very clear that they're going to come up here and they're going to knock off this little old state senator and reward Steve for his loyalty. So again, when you talk about support that's out there, I'm not asking for endorsements, I'm asking for votes, and I feel very comfortable in my day-to-day activities.
What type of a fight is this going to be for you?
Well, since 1948, it's been really hard for a lot of people. But you remember, when I first got into politics in 2009, never held an office before. I was the first Republican in 30 years to ever hold the Sioux City seat, which is a highly Democratic seat. And people said the same thing to me then. It's like, what are you thinking? What are you doing? It's an unwinnable seat. You can't raise the money. Do you need the money? And I went out and I knocked on the doors. And it's the same way when I announced this. I went out and got my 3,000 signatures myself. I do day-to-day activities. Of course, 97% of incumbents get reelected. 97% of congressional Republicans get reelected. But you know what you call the other 3%? Congressmen. I mean, lightning does strike. I mean, so it's an uphill battle, but I think people are quietly going about their business and they're going to make a change.
What is your strategy beyond knocking on doors?
Well, right now what we do is we're targeting county by county. You know, I'm a math person by trade, and we look at the counties that are actually going to show up and vote. We understand, Woodbury, Clay, Plymouth, Osceola, so we know where the math is, and it's going to be it's a completely different election, a general election versus a primary election. So if you look at the signage, and if you look at our crowds that we have at the ethanol plants, the manufacturers and those type of things, they've been growing, and that really, it's a true grassroots movement. So, and what I find in Iowa is Iowans are smart, Iowans are savvy, and they tend to just start layering themselves. So when I'm in Sibley, and then all of a sudden I'm in Spirit Lake, and you start talking to people that have overlaid, you know you're doing the right thing. And I think we're going to shock some people up in Northwest Iowa with our coverage.
A lot of Steve King's support in the district seems to come from moral values voters,
Yes.
so-called anyway, on social issues like against abortion, against gay rights, and so on.
Yep.
Are those issues important to you, and are you highlighting them? And can you explain?
You know, as a conservative, of course, they're important to me. When I ran in 2009, I ran on an economic agenda: commercial property taxes, the roads, those things. And I'm not shy. That's what I'm running on this time. But when it comes to being a conservative, I don't know if we talk about this at the debate coming up on the 3rd. It might be kind of a boring part of the debate. I don't know if him and I can run farther to the right. When it comes to life, I'm a pro-life Catholic. I'm actually a no exceptions Catholic, which bothers some people because I believe the life of the mother is a medical procedure. So that people can call that an exception, they can't. So when it comes to life, I'm about as strong as it can. When it comes to Second Amendment, Bill knows this, and you guys know this from the chamber. When you talk about who's the gun guy in the Iowa Senate, I'm the sponsor of Stand Your Ground legislation, which protects Iowans from civil liberty. I go out and I work the gun shows, and I play hard in races when it comes to people that are against the Second Amendment. So again, when it comes to those things, I'm not sure I can run any farther to the right or need to run any farther to the right. When it comes to traditional family values, I'm a father, of 3. I believe in traditional family marriage, family values. I don't know how much more we can go to the right on that. So limited small government, so from a conservative standpoint, it's going to be pretty hard to pitch that I'm not a conservative. The difference is that somewhere along the line, the word conservative, effective, and likable got lost. Those three words. And I can't figure out why. You can be conservative, you can be effective, and you can be likable. And I think I'm going to bring that to the 4th District when it comes to effectiveness. The 4th District is going to get something that we haven't had in 14 years in Washington. I say Washington, I wash my clothes too. My mother corrects me. But we're going to get something that we haven't had in almost 14 years. We're going to get a reset opportunity. Just like when I came to the Iowa Senate, you're a fresh face, you come in, and they're going to ask you what's important to you. And I'm going to lay out, after I've spoken to the ag leaders and the business leaders, and say, you know what, we need to refocus on what Iowa's about when it comes to renewable fuels, when it comes to agriculture and manufacturing infrastructure. We're going to get an opportunity that you get with new leadership, and I think that's what Iowans are ready for.
So you mentioned Second Amendment.
Yeah.
What do you, on the federal level, what needs to change as far as gun laws?
Actually, I think from the gun perspective is we need to stop whittling away at our Second Amendment rights. I think that when you see things like, now the talk is, expiring ammunition and those type of things, those are just whittling away at the edges. Anything that has to do with strengthening the Second Amendment, I'm on board with. I got an A rating with the NRA, so I'm all on board with whatever it takes to protect it. I believe it's a right, not a privilege of the Second Amendment, and I'll stand strong with it.
What about same-sex marriage? What would you do about that?
You know what? I think, again, it's hard to preach tolerability by being intolerant. And I think that, Iowa didn't melt down. I mean, my personal beliefs is I believe in the family. Marriage is between one man and one woman. I get that part of it. But also you also have to understand is that, that there has to be a little bit of tolerance in here along the way. I believe in civil unions, but I also don't think that discrimination in any form should happen. And Iowa didn't melt the last few years, and I'm just going to leave it at that. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
You're welcome.
One other issue that you mentioned before was TPP, trade
Yeah.
policy.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you know, this is splitting the Republican Party
Mhm.
right now.
It is.
The parent nominee, and would disagree with you on this. So, how would you pursue TPP specifically and trade policy in general?
Well, I think that's the beauty of my candidacy is with the new president coming on board. And as you guys know, Trump wasn't my first choice, but he is now the nominee, and I'm anybody but Hillary right now. That's where I'm at. So when it comes to the new president, I think that the 4th District is going to have an opportunity for a new fresh face to be with this president and to talk with this president, talk with leadership about the importance of an agreement like the TPP. Again, what this agreement represents to Iowans, to farmers, to manufacturing is the largest agriculture opportunity we've probably seen in our lifetime. Talking about opening up Japan, the South Pacific Rim, Malaysia. Again, it's an opportunity for us to export our pork, our beef, and our soy products. And I believe what's good for Iowa is good for the nation. But what I also like is that we're going to have new leadership that is going to be firm with these trade agreements. I look forward to being at that table to make sure that Iowa has a seat at that table. Because let's all be honest with each other. Do we really believe that our representative, our congressman right now is going to be able to sit at that table and represent us? I mean, there's just not that get-along attitude. So I think that what I'm going to provide is that fresh opportunity for us to stand in front of leadership, to stand in front of our new president, and give Iowa a seat at that table.
But I mean, what is it that you're going to make sure that's firm about the agreement?
I think the big thing there is those tariffs. I mean, if you can take the tariff from 39% to 9% in Japan, and those type of fair trade that's going back and forth. But the bottom line is this is about you talk to our cattlemen, you talk to about our pork producers. This is the hugest export opportunity. So what I will bring to the table is explain what this means to our economy and what it means to America, and actually also explain what it means to America. Anytime we push protein out into the world, what happens into those areas? Wages go up, lifestyles go up, peace. I mean, us pushing out protein is so important as to America. So that's what I'm going to help stand with the new president, stand with new leadership, and make sure that we have a seat at the table.
And I understand those benefits, and we as an editorial board have supported the trade
Sure.
agreement for that reason. But there are people in both parties, workers who don't see the benefits of these trade agreements. So, I mean, what are you going to do to ensure that workers are protected?
Well, I think you also need to debunk kind of why some of the reasons, I understand the currency issue, and I mean, the foreign jobs their jobs are leaving, but I think they're also leaving because we've got the highest corporate income tax rate. I think they're also leaving because we have the highest regulation. They're also leaving because some places we've got strangleholds from unions. So, again, all of those issues need to be on the table with this new president, with new leadership coming in, because I believe, like Iowa, America is ready for action. We have stood at our corners and barked at the moon and barked at each other with nothing getting done. And I'm not convinced, and I think most Republicans, again, as a constituent, don't believe that the current Republicans that we have there right now are going to work together to get things done. We're not passing legislation we need now to put on the president's desk to be vetoed. So again, that's where Americans are at. As you can tell, I am a true outsider in this. I was an outsider when I came on board in 2009. Little did I know that was, quote, the Tea Party movement. I didn't know what that was. Or anything. All I know, it was a bunch of non-traditionals that decided to get into government. Well, guess what? I'm a product of the 5 years ago, the 6 years ago. We're all now got in the game. We've got elected that was part of that first wave. Now we're pushing up, and we're pushing up, and the establishment, even in Iowa, doesn't like it. And right now, with all these endorsements, they're sending a message out there, because we don't have primary in Iowa. That's the rule. And any of you guys out there, from county supervisor all the way up to the national level, if you're thinking about primary in one of us, this is what you're installed for. So they're putting up. There's so much more inside baseball going here from the political side, because they're trying to reject people like me. Because guess what happens to people like me? We don't run. We go away. And again, I think that's why we're in such a critical time in the 4th District. Because again, I am a viable candidate from the largest county in the district, with a proven economic record, and someone that votes my district. And here's the benefit. I'm a conservative. So I got kids, 8, 6, and 4. I know student loans. I understand the day-to-day stuff. I'm a business owner. I write on the front side of checks, not on the back side of checks. I build things for a living. So I just think that I represent exactly where this country, and I believe where Iowa has been the last 4 or 5 years. And I think I'm bubbling up.
Where does immigration fit into your economic vision for the 4th District? And are there areas where you disagree with Congressman King?
Well, I get this question, I would bet, almost every stop, every town hall that I stop at, I get the immigration question. And I look at it as 2 issues. And I think that's the first thing, is that to identify the issue. I do believe this new president is going to deal with this issue, and I think it's going to happen in the next few years. So first of all, I break it in 2. There's the national security issue, and then there's the Iowa workforce issue. That's how I view this issue as a state senator. So let's just talk about the first part, which is the national security issue, because the country is there. I don't believe that before anything you can talk about the workforce development or immigration until we take care of what needs to be done at the border. We need, again, it's going to be sealed. I believe this next president is going to seal the border. And it's going to stop off not only the bad guys, which is a priority for our national security, it's going to stop the flow of drugs, and it's also going to stop the free flow of cheap labor, illegal labor. And this is going to ruffle some of my business colleagues, because they like that free flow of labor. But again, I have a record that shows I vote my district. I'll vote what needs to be done. So some of this comes back to the business. We have to cut off the demand for this cheap labor. So once that happens at the border, now we can talk about, I believe, was the Iowa issue, which is the workforce, the labor issue, and in a humane way. So now, again, I want to make it real clear. So I always got to make this clear when I'm in a meeting. By no means am I supporting any path of legalization or citizenship. I don't want to be misconstrued as there's a differentiation there. There's not. But what I do believe is that we can do things to put a workforce in place, a legal workforce in place. What I mean by that is identify these people. Number one, if they're bad people, even like our new president, they're going to go home. If they're identified and they don't come out, they're going to go home at the end of the day. If not, then we get in. We expand the HB1 visa program. We look at the green card system, and we put people in a place that we know who they are in a defined space in a defined period of time. And then we begin the assimilation process. We put them at the back of the line. We don't reward them. We put them at the back of the line, and we start the process of assimilation that they can then become citizens from the back of the line, or they can live a productive life within Iowa. This is what we did. Our great-grandparents did. My great-grandparents brought over Russian immigrants. They paid their fare over. They worked for us. Not us, for my grandparents. They worked the turkey farms. They assimilated. And again, that's how we did it. And that's what people in Sioux County and Lynn County or Lyon County and Plymouth County and all, that's what they want to do, because these people have become a part of our communities. So let's get them on a track that identifies who they are, get them plugged in, the bad people go, the border gets sealed, and we move forward. This is an issue we need to address. Sorry, Kathy.
To be clear, though, you said you're not for a path to citizenship, but then you said people who are
Legalization.
okay, people who are here illegally can go to the back of the line, and they can be legalized but not become citizens.
I think exactly. I think what you need to do at that point, if they've been here, if they identify themselves, they understand why they're here. We need to incentivize their children. We need to incentivize people that are coming now not to come illegal. Does that make sense?
But it sounds like you're saying first you said no path of legalization, but you are saying that there are some people here who are undocumented who can stay.
After we get them in the system as a documented worker. That's the whole key is we don't know who these people are. And then they're working for cash. And they're working for all, and it becomes this dark market, this underbelly of society that it is. Again, once the border is sealed, and we get that taken care of, then we come back to the Iowa labor issue. And this idea, and I think it's an illusion, I know it's an illusion, of that there's so many jobs out there that these people are taking that Iowans would work, is an illusion. My brother would hire 25 people tomorrow at 17 or 25 bucks an hour in construction and drywall and those type of things. The dairies, Iowa's always embraced immigration. It's always embraced it. What we need to do now is to address the issue that we have right now, which is identifying who these people are, get them in a workforce status that identifies that they're responsible people for society, and then move forward from there.
So what is this?
Kathy, did that help?
I think so. I mean, I'm still a little bit confused. You say you don't want an incentive for people to come here illegally, but if the border is sealed, then you don't have to worry about that incentive, right?
I think that's why I said I think once it's sealed, you lose that incentive. But then how do you deal with who's here? And again, we need to identify, send home the bad people, get the other people in a system that we know and in and out. If they overstay or they don't, and understand that they're good people, they're productive, but they're in a workforce status.
Okay, but never a path to citizenship.
No.
And so what I'm hearing is no mass deportations. You wouldn't support that.
Again, as one member of 435, I think that when all of this comes to the table, I think there's going to be a lot of ideas out there, and I know that's one of them, but at this point, I don't see how that's possible. Not saying that it's, I think you're going to see a mass deportation of bad people, is what I think you're going to see.
And when you define bad people, you mean people with a criminal record?
Criminal records, the people that just don't, offenders, those type of things. And I do think with this new president, which we've seen in the past, sometimes people will go back on their own. I mean, I think there'll be some of that movement also.
That's assuming Trump gets elected.
I'm a Republican, so I'm assuming.
Okay.
So.
What is your relationship with Steve King like? What has it been like?
Yeah, you know what? I've known him now for probably a decade. We haven't had a lot of interaction because, again, I wouldn't say that I'm a long-term politician. I wouldn't say that I've had massive disagreements with him when it comes to the social issues and those things. But I can tell you that my discontentment has grown like many Iowans, which is I just don't believe at this point that he's working towards an Iowa agenda. I don't believe that he's really, I hang out with economic development people. I hang out with capital people. I hang out with builders. That's not his agenda right now. And for the people, and I mean this very sincerely, for the people that believe that he's our culture warrior, that he's been fighting this culture war for 10 years, I keep asking people, especially my conservative friends, and I'm just as conservative, are we winning the war when it comes to life, when it comes to family values, when it comes to, are we winning that war? So again, is it because it's our message, or is it because it's the messengers? So I think right now that we're in a spot as a conservative movement that we don't need to change our core beliefs. We just need to change the messengers. It's time.
So
it's evolution.
Am I hearing you say that, I guess, is there any issue that you disagree with Representative King on, or is it more about style and...
I think it's a combination of both. I do think, but I also think that when I looked at it, and the things that bothered me is when the bird flu hit our district, okay? Remember when the bird flu hit?
Sure.
And you looked at our district, our Congressional 4th District is one of the hardest hit. And guess when the declarations came out, for disaster declarations came out, guess what districts didn't get included in those initially? It just happened to be the ones that were all in the 4th District. Why is that? Why is that? When it came to the major ice storm that came through northwest Iowa and the REC polls, why did it take 3 years for the section that went through Steve King's district to be replaced? Those type of things. I mean, those are the issues I think that are subtle but reality. Again, I appreciated the congressman's work early and what he's done for agriculture. But let's look at the last decade in your body of work. And he's going to claim that he's run the most amendments as anyone in Congress. Well, you know what? There's a guy that sits up in the Capitol building, we know, a senator up there, a Republican senator, that runs amendments 10 times a day. And you get people just quit listening. It's not effective. So I think right now is, to answer your question, this isn't personal, but I also want to say this isn't about Steve. This is about the people of the 4th District that are ready to make a change, because I think we reflect where the nation is. And I'm willing to give a viable choice to those people.
Let's talk about your record in
Sure.
In the
I own
state
it.
Senate. It's 6 years?
6 years, yep.
Okay, so what's your major accomplishments?
Well, I think right now is number one is, as people know, I've had a different experience really than Steve's had also. I'm in the minority. So it's made me a better legislator, I believe. And as much as Mike Gronsall and I don't see eye to eye really on anything, I think he listens, and I'm willing to talk about our issues. Commercial property taxes, I ran on that issue. And again, I was a major part, that's not my words, that's the governor's words. I was a major part of that movement 3 years ago, which included a lot of things for Northwest Iowa, which was very good for us, which was, we moved our assisted living facilities from commercial to residential property taxes. Doesn't seem like a big deal. It's a big deal in Northwest Iowa. Those are the little things that you're able to add when it came to that great big bill. When it comes to Highway 20, I'm not shy about it. I put a plan together my second year in, when it came to letters to the editor, trying to play off of the governor's legacy and other things. And I was able to build a coalition in Northwest Iowa that held firm and put those dollars. It hadn't been the gas tax in 30 years. It wasn't my plan. As a Republican, do I want to do that? No. But I understand the economic opportunities that 4-lane artery does for Western Iowa. I just look east of Des Moines and look at all that concrete that's been put down over the last 2-3 decades and what's filtered in between it now. And now with Highway 20, this is a huge, how could I not go for that opportunity? So that's a big part of my record there. When it comes to Sioux City, was almost 3 decades of building nothing other than Section 8 housing. Section 8 housing, that's all we have. No capital was coming into our community. Now what do you see? We're a boomtown right now because of our targeted jobs program that we were able to pass. No one said, remember that bill? No one said we'd get that through, Kathy. Nobody said we'd be able to get that renewed. It did. We got it done. We got it done clean. Huge opportunity what it's doing for Western Iowa and Sioux City. Those are a big part of my record. Little things like finding permanent funding for our Poison Control Center. The point I'm trying to make is they may seem small at the state level, some of those issues, but that's the agenda that I went with. And when I go to Washington, it's going to be very simple. I'm going to sit with our ag leaders. I'm going to sit with our business leaders and say, what's our Iowa agenda? Because we got a window here. We got about a decade. And let's run it. And let's put us on point. And I believe that's going to be the difference. And it's a reset opportunity.
The commercial property tax, some of the critics have said,
Sure.
we are feeling the impact of that now on the state budget. It's taking away money from education and others. What is your response to that?
My response is that I think it's actually doing it. The plan is laid out exactly what it was supposed to do. It was going to take 3 years to implement. You got to remember, that was a big year. We had commercial property taxes, we had the Medicaid expansion, we had the education reform. And when the governor laid out his line, when he had with the surplus, it was a 3-year implementation program. We're there. You're going to see now revenues catch up with the budget. That's why I think that was kind of an uneventful year this year. We're able to pass coupling. I credit Senate Republicans for getting together and putting pressure on the governor there. So again, I don't think that the budget is as bad a shape as people think it is. Obviously there's a downturn in the ag communities right now, and people are nervous, which has an impact on the budget. But for the most part, it's been a pretty good run. The state's had a pretty good run.
There were only 4 members of your caucus, you were one of them, to vote for that commercial property tax relief bill when it went through the Senate. Why didn't most of your colleagues in the Republican caucus support that bill?
I think what you see, you got to remember, when you're in the minority, you're the party of no. So our job as Senate Republicans is to vote no. And you guys know, sitting in the caucus, when you look at someone that doesn't vote no the most, who would that person be? Down at the center of the table. I do vote for the budget. I vote for economic development. I do vote for transportation. I do vote for agriculture. I do vote for economic. Because you want to know why? Because there's at some point we were sent down here to do a job within there. A lot of this. So if that answers your question or not, Kathy,
So it was just basically
it's a no.
A reflex no because it was.
It's a no. And again, it goes back to the fact that some people wanted to go to residential property taxes. Some people didn't want it. Some people wanted to wait until we maybe took control. There was the idea, if you remember rewind 2 years ago, there was the idea that we were going to take power in the Iowa Senate, and there was that, let's do it this way. And my feeling is strike now, get it done. And that's why I'm very sincere. I believe in term limits. I believe in term limits from day one. Problem is, we're not ever going to get people to vote themselves out for term limits. I'm going to run for 2 terms in the Iowa Senate. I was very clear about that. I'm in my 6th year. I feel it right now. I've run my course. I'm running my course in the Iowa Senate. And when I leave, I feel like I've checked off the majority of the things that I wanted to get done up here. That's the same attitude I'm going to take when I go to D.C., is that we have a set agenda. I'm the guy that writes things down every morning. I scratch it out as I go. And if it wasn't on my list, I write it down anyway and I scratch it off. And I'm going to run an agenda, an Iowa agenda. because I came out of the biotech industry. I came out of that fancy coffee and all the traveling. If you think I'm going to get swayed or serenaded in D.C., that's not what this is about. I'm going to go there on point. I'm going to be likable, conservative, and effective, and it's going to be good for Iowa. Then I'm going to move on.
So if you were elected, would you only serve 2 terms?
No, I think the decade in front of me is the opportunity. It really is. Here's the decade of opportunity. If guys like me don't run, the existing leadership we have in the 4th District will be there another decade. If guys like me run and people step up and I give them a viable option, I believe there's a decade of opportunity. We will not be sitting here 14 years later talking to 14-year Congressman Rick Bertrand. I'm in that 8-10 year range. Run hot, get what you need to get done, get out. Because it's proven, even our own congressman showed, you're most effective your first 3 or 4 years. That's your capital. That's your brand. And if you don't excel and get yourself in a leadership position, which our congressman has not, he's been bypassed, then you become politically impotent. When you become politically impotent, what do? You run to microphones. When you run to microphones, you got to say something people want to hear. But then the problem is that to get to the next microphone, you got to say something a little bit more louder, a little bit more outrageous for people to hear. And that's the spiral that we're in right now with our leadership. So I was in a good place with Joni and with Rod and others. Leader changes in the air.
So you would serve a maximum of 10 years in Congress?
Yeah, I'm 46.
And
I'm coming home.
And you do not plan to seek re-election to the Iowa Senate?
I do not.
Okay.
Bill, that's not news.
Okay.
Bill will be judging that.
No, I'm kidding. But that's 6 years in. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's been a great run. But I'm coming home. I'm either going to move up or out. And that's what I think you're seeing a lot of these non-traditional people saying. You remember old Hubert Hauser? Remember what Hubert said to me? First year in the Senate, Hubert said to me, he goes, 2 things, Bertrand. He says, you got to figure it out. People like you, and you vote your district. Second thing is I stayed too long. Those were his advice to me. And the third thing he said was, the goal here is not to go home with a pocket full of failed amendments. That's great advice I got right there. He stayed too long. He was a man of very little words, and he was a very likable guy. And it's ironically, like me, my stuff always seems to get on at the end. I don't know how that works. My stuff always seems to get on to standing. So,
Congressman King suggests that your candidacy is basically the result
yes.
of some special interests who got mad during the caucus
Sure.
season and went recruiting to find somebody to run against him. Is that what your candidacy is all about?
No, what you got to remember is let's rewind to when Tom Harkin gave up his seat. And there was a lot of hubbub and a lot of buzz on who's going to fill that seat. And Steve King was a big part of that conversation. As we know, it got prolonged forever. And I had a lot of business leaders, ag leaders, a lot of the same people that talked me into running in 2009 came to me and said, hey, if this happens, this is a seat you need to go for. This would be good for the 4th District. It's good for Western Iowa. It's good for Sioux City. So again, the conversation started right there. That's where the dialogue has happened. And the idea that I don't know Bruce Rassler, go back and check they've known me since 2009. I've had a dialogue with these people. I've had a dialogue with Iowa Agriculture. As you know, the Iowa Corn Growers, the Soybean Association, a friend of agriculture when it comes to the Farm Bureau. The renewable fuels industry in 2014 gave me their highest award possible when it came to a legislator. So again, the ag community's been with me because they know I vote what you believe, not just for a resume. So the idea that this is somehow some black helicopter, this is grassroots, this is about as primitive, this is about as get out and go do it. Now, did a perfect storm happen? Yeah. I think that when the congressmen, against the advice of a lot of people on the ground, were told, hey man, you're getting involved with Ted Cruz. When he became the national co-chair, I think that was a flashpoint with a lot of people, a lot of ag people, a lot of business people. And I think it was right then when things need a flashpoint. And I think that's where, ironically, that campaign met mine. And here's the best part. They're all from Iowa. They're from my district. You know, if anybody thinks at this table that I'm some Des Moines insider, I go to these events, people start name dropping, because that's what you do in politics, you name drop. I don't know these people. I don't know them. Don't claim to know them. So at the end of the day, the idea that I'm some guy out of Sioux City that the Des Moines establishment has hovered around is kind of comical. But what I do know is that when it comes to what we're getting done, it's done with Iowans. And I believe the difference is beating up on this little 6-year state senator. The money's coming from D.C. and it's coming from Texas. To me, that's the story. That's the story.
You supported Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
In the caucuses, and is he supporting you? You getting any?
Yeah, I mean,
advice, assistance?
you got to remember. I mean, there's a difference between supporting and there's a difference between part of the campaign. I mean, Jack Whitford was the great guy. I mean, I supported Marco, introduced him at a few events. I like Marco. I think he's fresh for America. He has 3 little kids like I do, student loans. He has a great vision for America. if the truth of the matter, I haven't really asked anybody for any endorsements because I don't think that matters. The only endorsement that's going to matter, only political endorsement that matters in this June 7th election is the endorsement that Congressman King gave to Ted Cruz when he signed on as co-chair. That's the only endorsement that's sticking in Iowans' minds right now because you know what? They're done. They know it was a betrayal. They know that he had an opportunity on a national stage. Every time Ted Cruz stood on that stage and pointed his finger at America on those debate stages and says, I took on the special interest, I took on ethanol in Iowa and I won. There was an opportunity for our congressman to stand up and say, hey, wait, time out. You know, as a co-chair of his message, let's be reality what this really is, what the renewable fuel standard really is. It's access to a market. It's not a subsidy. I mean, a subsidy is what we had before we had the renewable fuels. Everybody here, I'm a farm guy. Everybody remember $1.65 corn, $1.85 corn?
Yeah.
There's a little thing called LDP payments. That's called a subsidy. Right. Since the renewable fuel standard has been here, we haven't had those LDPs. We've cut ourselves off of those subsidies. You know, the renewable fuel industry right now is amazing. 3.5% of our total GDP in Iowa. $2.3 billion in annual payroll, 44,000 jobs it creates. What that would do if we get weaned off in 2022, if this gets turned over to an EPA bureaucrat like it did in the biodiesel fuels, you're going to see land values. We burn 43% of our crop in state. Our land values, our rents drop back into the 100, 150, 200 range. Crops, again, the prices go down. Again, we've already converted our cattlemen to our DDG, to our high-quality proteins. What this does, this is a slow, catastrophic disaster if the renewable fuels go away. All we're asking for right now is to maintain our access.
So how long does that access, how long would you maintain traditional ethanol,
Yeah.
conventional ethanol's access within the RFS?
Well, I think right now what you do is you give some certainty to the market for capital investments. Let's go another 10 years. Again, it's not a subsidy, just access at current levels. I think all ag people at this point would be very, very comfortable maintaining that current levels that we're in production right now. That's right. That also it encourages capital, banks, that they're not scared, those type of things, to invest in this industry. From a longevity standpoint, I think that's where you need to be. But this is another good thing that's happening, though. And Kathy and Bill know this. We just passed the the biochemical tax credit in Iowa, first in the nation. Now, what this is, a lot of people don't understand how huge this is for Iowa and what we did. We're the first in the nation that's now going to go and put a nickel a pound towards some of this byproduct that's coming out of our current ethanol plants, being used by preservative companies, pharmaceutical companies, other things. This is how we're going to rebuild small-town Iowa. People ask, how do you rebuild Ida Grove? How do you rebuild Rock Rapids? How do you rebuild Marcus and Holstein, where these plants are? How do you rebuild? This is how you do it. We now have a decade of opportunity to go out and recruit these plants into our state. Good jobs, real jobs that are going to now, again, and what they do, and this answers your question, it provides another layer, another peripheral layer of insulation around our renewable fuels industry. Our cattlemen, our poultry are already rallying around our renewable fuels for dependency. If now we get another industry that's back here, high quality industry, because again, it comes out of high quality jobs, so it is budget neutral for the next 10 years. Kathy, you knew that. It is budget neutral. So, and if we can do that the next 10 years, that creates another layer, a peripheral layer of insulation around our renewable fuels, which again allows us to stand alone. But let's be honest, big oil's in play right now. They want that market share, and they're going to do everything they can do to keep chipping away. And what I keep saying is, what makes me nervous is we've got a Texan at the chair on the gavel of the Ag Committee when it should be an Iowan. That should be our chair. So when I go in front of leadership and they ask, what's your goal? Is it, what's going to put me in a position in that committee that I can actually wield power?
You said it's budget neutral, but you're taking it from high quality jobs.
Correct.
Which means that you're instead of giving tax credit for job creation, you're giving a tax credit for producing biomass per pound. So
yes and no. It's infrastructure. You got to remember, it's $1 million a year for the first 5 years on infrastructure. But you also got to remember there's quality jobs tied to that, which you see when you look at the long-term picture of what that means for quality. They're not talking about 1-2 jobs in these plants. The overall, if you look at the snapshot of what this provides, there's not anybody that disagrees. What we're doing is very unique, and it's cutting edge, and it's an opportunity. But I go back to, when somebody goes to D.C., who do you think is going to go out there and look for those opportunities? I get this question all the time too, which is, well, what would you be doing different? What opportunities have we missed? How do I know? Because you are who you hang out with. You are who you're out there, what you're maneuvering. And again, if Iowans are, I don't think, if you're looking for someone that's going to go down there and stand at the border every 3 months, it's not me. If you're looking for somebody that's going to go out there and speak at MPAC, LPAC, ZPAC, QPAC, I don't know, whatever PAC, that's not me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go out there as one of 435 with a clean mission, an Iowa agenda, something that I want, because What satisfaction am I going to get out of this at the end of 8, 10 years? Satisfaction is the same thing I'm getting right now in the Iowa Senate. I can look down my list and I can go boom, boom, boom. This is what I did. This is what we did. And again, it's going to come with consequences. It's called my record.
So I want to pivot just a little bit. So you've said you bring together 3 traits that aren't very common today. Conservative, likable,
And effective.
So you've talked about your conservative credentials.
Yeah.
Talk to
Impressive.
me about what it means to be likable
Yeah.
and effective.
I think number one is a guy like me. I'm a first generation. I'm first generation money. I mean, my dad worked at Mid-American. My mom worked at Sears. And when you start convincing people to give you opportunities, and then later in life for banks to loan you money and other things to happen, there's got to be a likability factor. You can be tough, you can be principled, but you can also be likable. You don't have to be in your face. You don't have to be. It isn't about a headline. It isn't about running to a microphone. And I just think that right now that people misinterpret likability as someone's going to go out there and just be part of the get along. No, likability means that you and I can disagree. I can disagree with Joe Bokum all day long. But you know what? There's a likability factor. I know he likes me, and I know he'll listen. And that's what we need right now. We need people that are going to go out there and not afraid to put themselves in environments with, God forbid, Democrats and independents and other people, and actually try to put our message forward, our Iowa agenda forward. But the nice part about it is, what's going to make my job easy as likable is it's going to be an Iowa agenda. And what's good for Iowa is good for the nation. That answer your question?
That answered the likable part. Talk
Yeah.
to me about the effective.
The effectiveness is just not being afraid of your record. It is. I mean, again, I say this about Highway 20. For as much as I got beat up on Highway 20 early on, it came from political people. It didn't come from the county. It didn't come from the local people. So to be effective, you got to look at it and say, this is an opportunity that's best for the district. They sent me here to make these tough decisions. I can promise you, in the last 30 years, other representatives in Northwest Iowa have had opportunities. Maybe not maneuvered as slick, maybe not maneuvered as well, but they've had opportunities for funding and those type of things. But oh no, not gonna damage my record, because everybody in there thinks they're going to be governor or senator or congressman because they're all worried about their records. I'm not. I vote my district, I vote conservative, and I vote to be effective. And when I go to D.C., I'm going to do the same thing. Vote your district. It rewards you. And again, you got to remember, I came back 4 years later after Gronstall said enjoy my 4 years. 4 years later, I came back and I won by 3,000 votes. So I was doing something right.
Are there issues where, looking at the past couple of years, you would have voted against Republican leadership for your district?
Oh no, you should ask Bill Dickstead. He probably would say the difference is there's things he wish he would have done, taken back.
In Congress.
Repeat the question, Kathy. I'm
In
sorry.
Congress. All right, looking back the last couple of years, are there issues where you would have voted against your Republican leadership for the interests of your district?
You know what? I'm just being honest. My focus has been on the Iowa Senate. If you have specific issues you want to ask me on, Kathy, I'd fire back at you. I do believe that just like there was in the Iowa Senate, you remember when I came in, there was a change with Paul McKinley and others. There was a change. We worked hard at that change. I think that we have done that same transition at the national level with Boehner and others. There's a transition. So now what you see is, now that there's a transition in the Iowa Senate, you're going to see people, my time is to go. I mean, it's time to move on. The same way I think now in the backlash of Boehner, there's a certain amount of people in D.C. that just need to go. There's too much baggage. Everyone agrees term limits is that people stay too long. People just simply, when I can sit in a 3-person subcommittee and someone says to me, I'm like, why did you vote against that? Well, because so-and-so, it's so-and-so's bill from their town. Really? I mean, that's baggage. That's personal. And I think that's where we become in politics. It's become too mudded down.
Chuck Grassley's been there too long?
Well, I get that on the stump all the time too. I get Terry Branstad and Chuck Grassley, the 2 questions I get. Chuck Grassley, number one, the reason that I don't think with Chuck is Chuck's relevant. Chuck's relevant in D.C. He's a chairman of a committee. He's standing up for conservative values. He went out and got 37 other senators to sign a letter that says, no, we're not going to put an end to the RFS. That's relevancy. That's leadership. That's about as blunt as it gets. Now, when it comes to Terry Branstad, people say, oh, you're a hypocrite because Terry's been there, your term limits. You know what? Terry left. Then a guy by the name of Chet Culver came along, screwed the state up. Guess what? We re-elected Terry. And now he's there in his 2nd term, and I think he's going to be done. So I think it's apples to oranges. And you got to remember, the power of incumbency is crazy. You know this. The money, the organization, it's crazy. And show me someone that's viable has stepped up. No one has.
But if you have term limits, you're taking out those people who are effective as well as those who, have.
I think we'll be okay. I think we'll be okay as a nation.
I'm going to rewind a bit. You've mentioned several times your children and student loans.
Yeah.
What plans will you have to address college affordability, student loan debt?
Yeah, well, it'd be nice to get the government out of banking, because I think that's why things are so expensive right now, because when the government gets involved in giving away large amounts of money and loaning large amounts of money, it's funny how the market responds to that. So I think that's a key issue there. I also think that we need to go back to what we're doing in Sioux City, which is fun, which is focusing on the trades, and maybe stressing more on career academies and electricians and plumbers, and you can go out and make $100,000, $120,000 driving a truck, taking the stereotypes away from them at an earlier age. I also think that we need to sit down from a college perspective and look at what the degrees are and narrow in our focus and say, you know, and put a plan in front of college kids, you know, and say, what are your goals? What are you looking to major in? Okay, you know, what's the starting salary when you graduate? Get a feel for it. What's going to be your end result when it comes to your cost, your assumed risk? And then actually put a plan in front of people, maybe not their freshman year, maybe their sophomore year after they get that out of their system, that freshman year, but lay it in front of them, say, are you informed? Are you aware of what's coming, what's down the road? You're on a track right now for a $1,200 a month payment. I mean, those type of things. Those are things that just aren't being discussed, but that's what happens when government's in there and loaning money, and here we go. Did you like that? You kind of looked at me a little bit.
I've got I'm getting ready to send mine off to college.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm paying attention.
Well, I'm going to do the same thing my dad did for my kids. Everybody's like, oh, you know, what are you doing to save for college? I'm going to do the same thing my dad did. He paid for the first semester. That way, he said that he could never say he didn't send me to college. I was the first Bertrand to go. So.
And you started.
I was Central. Yeah, I started at the community college. So it was one of those things where I was going to stay on the farm, keep laying tile, keep laying carpet, doing what I was doing, or take a shot. And I did. And over in Fort Dodge, I went over there and for a year, and I ended up over at UNI. And, 4 years later, I walked across the stage, and here I am. My whole life, man, people would tell me what I can't do. And trust me, I'm not naive about this race. I'm not. I understand math. I understand odds. I understood it. I mean, I do. So, but I also understand that people respond to people that are genuine. And you can't fake this. Either people believe I'm in this for the right reason or I'm not. I'm in it for the right reason. I believe in what I'm doing. And I'm not afraid of June 8th.
You know,
The day after.
Oh, okay.
See the forward thinking? See the forward thinking there? See the forward thinking? Come on.
So I mean, the other thing, you talk about an Iowa focus, but
Yeah.
a
Iowa
job in
first. I like that.
Congress-
Iowa first, if we're looking for the phrase.
Okay, Iowa first. A job in Congress
Yeah.
would require you to take on some new issues, including foreign policy.
Yes.
So where do you stand? What would you describe as your foreign policy agenda, and what are you doing to get up
Sure.
to speed in that?
Yeah, I think just like when I came to the Iowa Senate, the first time I walked into the Capitol was the day I got sworn in. And everybody's like, oh yeah, so much to get caught up to speed. Well, you bury yourself in it. But when it comes to national security, I think this one, again, is an opportunity that we're going to have with the new president. For the last, I think, 6-8 years, we've kind of had our head in the sand when it comes to what's going on over in the Middle East. I truly believe that we're watching a real-time Holocaust with Christians right now over in the Middle East, and we're not doing anything about it. So I do think this next president is going to address the issue over in the Middle East. As one member of 435, I'm excited to have a little bit of input on that. And I think what I will do is I will support very clear agendas, very clear agendas. Let's define the mission, what needs to be done over there when it comes to our security and our peace. And then you empower the generals and the people on the ground, put people on the ground that understand what needs to get done to win. And then you take the shackles off our men and women on the ground and unleash a victory. To me, that's how we're going to get it done. And I look forward to standing with this new president on the options that are going to be there. But as a state senator, in my 6th year, do I have a big, broad foreign policy? No, but I just know that when I get in there, I'm going to be able to work with the new administration and new leadership. Let's go back to, do you believe that our current people that we're with right now are going to be invited to the table to have a discussion about what's going on for our future?
Right now, what's happening? I mean, there's advances being made against ISIS. So
Sure.
I mean, how would you change what's going on now?
Well, advancement's all in the eyes of the beholder. I mean, they're still unleashing terrorism across the world. They're expanding their network. I think that at some point we're quietly getting back on the ground over there. So yeah, I'm going to support really what we believe needs to be the defined mission to protect Iowa, to protect Iowans first, protect Americans. And as one member of 435, I'll do that. So does it make me nervous or scare me? No. It's no different than anything else you take on in construction or in business. If that's my assignment, that's what I'll go to. Make no doubt about it. What I'm going there for right now, and when I stand in front of leadership, they're going to ask where I want to be. I want to be in the ag. I want to be on the ag committee, put myself on a path for leadership there, and I want to be in transportation and commerce. You know, those are biggies. Those are biggies. Are you going to be able to get those? Well, those are biggies. But you know what you are? You're also from a very, very solid Republican district in Iowa, first in the nation. If we can't wheel a little bit as a new representative and put ourselves in position, look what's happened with Joni and stuff like that. She's put herself in a position to get things done. And I also understand I'm not going to be in this to try to play the long game. I understand that our most effective days as a new congressman come those first few years, as it did with our current congressman, to understand that I've got a window of opportunity for our district, and I'm willing to seize on it. You like that? That's pretty good. That's pretty good. That was kind of flow. I'm in my rhythm now.
Well, now that you're in a rhythm, what is it? What haven't we asked that you expected or you wanted us to ask?
What haven't you asked?
Yeah.
You know what? I think the one you should ask, you think I can win? I mean, I do.
I think you can win.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I think that on the ground, if you go up there and you travel through northwest Iowa, and again, you don't just jump into this thing. You lay out the counties where the vote's going to turn out. Primary is completely different than a general election. You go up there and I've done the work on the ground when it comes to the day-to-day voters. So I feel very. I know people are going to say, oh, you know, the money and the raise. I mean, those things are going to take care of itself. I mean, there's going to be enough people. I've said this all along. The hardest part. Ask me this question. What's the hardest part about campaigning? Watch this.
What is the hardest part about it?
So the hardest part, it's a great question. Wish I'd have thought of it. The hardest part.
Likable a little bit.
The hard part, and I mean, the hardest part is when I'm in a meeting and someone comes up, a Republican comes up, and they are just out on Congressman King. They're just out on him, and they just want to go on and on. They just, oh, he's embarrassment, he's this, his language is inflammatory, and what he's doing. And I just sit there, and that's really, really hard because, again, I try to pivot and say that it's not about him anymore. It's not about him. It's about an opportunity that we have. And as soon as I can get, and it takes a little bit longer with some people because they're just wound up, but as soon as I can pivot away from that and get them back onto why I'm doing it, it all makes it better. But that's probably the hardest part is when people come up because I don't have any personal animosity or anything.
When you talk people, who do you mean by that?
Just when I'm in Target or if I'm in somewhere else. I mean, those type of things where people just come up on you and they're so excited and they're enthusiastic, but I don't want to be enthusiastic because it's about beating someone. I want them enthusiastic because it's about the opportunity that presents us with Iowa. And my job is to make that pivot. Listen, everybody's got a story, let them tell it. But that's the hardest part of the campaign is because I think there's so much discontent out there, not just with our congressman, but with Congress in general and I think with government in general. And I always remind them, I said, hey, I'm a product of your discontent, is what I am. Is because when I came in on that wave. But I'm also right now in that wave where I'm not going to sit up in that Capitol for 20 years. I'm not going to sit up there. I'm just not going to do it. I know what I've gotten done, and I know from an effective standpoint, I've run my course. And I'm running my course. But what I can do is I can take this to the next level, and if people want to embrace it, they can. If they don't, I get it. Power of incumbency is tough.
So I know you're enthusiastic that you can win this.
Do I look really?
You feel
That's
enthusiastic.
Good. Yeah.
You are also enthusiastic that your candidate's going to go into the White House come election day.
Well, I think a Republican is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a Republican is. How does your thought process change if, in fact, a Democrat is in the White House?
I'll probably have that same feeling I had in my stomach that I had the last Senate when we thought we were going to win the Senate up there, and I had to go back and work with Mike Groundstal. And the one before that, I've always been promised that we were going to get the majority. What you do is you just readjust. You take your time. And again, it goes back to the fact of, again, it's a choice for the 4th District and the opportunity we have in front of us for the next decade. God forbid, Hillary, in my opinion, God forbid if Hillary wins, who do you believe is going to have an opportunity again to work, to try to get an Iowa agenda in front of a new president, a new legislator? Do you think Hillary's going to work with Steve King?
Are you asking me?
I'm just leaving it open-ended. I mean, do you think Iowans believe that? I mean, I don't think anyone believes that because that's not where he's at. Or do Iowans believe that, you know what, we may have an opportunity here as we move in to new leadership for at least me to present the Iowa agenda. My agenda is very non-threatening because it's an Iowa agenda. Now, it might be threatening to Texas, might be threatening some of those people. That's why they're playing up here. But again, you go in there, and I think it goes back to new, fresh faces. And I'm going to bring a nice little stack of capital. That's what you get when you win. When you get a fresh face. We haven't had that in the 4th District in nearly 14 years. That capital's spent. It's gone.
So work with Hillary Clinton? You said, well, she worked with Steve King, but would you work with her? I mean, that part of that is, part of the concern, I think, from some Republicans is, yeah, you get Republicans who go to Washington and they sell out.
Did you use an R there?
working with-
Washington or Washington? I thought I heard it. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever said
Okay,
Washington.
good. But no, to answer your question on the get along, I think that is a concern of people, but I also think the country is changing. I believe the attitude in the country is changing. It doesn't mean that you give up your principles. It doesn't mean you give up your conservative values. But I do think the country is at a place that we have real issues and real opportunities in front of us. The country is set up for opportunity right now. And if it's a Democrat, like I did up in the Iowa Senate, I find a way to get my agenda. It doesn't interfere with my personal beliefs. My personal beliefs at times don't really, I don't think they come into it when other than outside of principle. You know what I mean? I feel like I'm going to be able to work together, who's there.
Do you think that President Obama has been treated fairly by Republicans in Congress?
And if you ask him, probably not. And if you ask Republicans, they probably think not tough enough. If I was in Congress right now, I probably would be. I don't talk about that because I pay that close attention. But I will say right now, as a constituent, I'm disappointed that when we won the Senate and we have the House, that we haven't used this opportunity to expose this president a little bit more and to curb his executive authority. We do a lot of task force and stuff, but task force don't get anything done. They just talk. And I think there's an opportunity missed. We could have put a whole slate. If it was a focused agenda, we could have put a focused agenda in front of him and make him do the work.
To curb him in what ways?
I just think with some of these executive orders, that are out there right now, I think some of these overreaches that he has. I think the Obamacare thing is starting to implode in front of us and is going to take care of itself. I think that the next president is going to be there and to do what probably needs to be done, what should have been done probably 5-6 years ago, which is send it back to the states, expand the Medicaid program, cover the uninsured, create competition. There's a plan there. I mean, we don't hear it because the people we have right now are just too busy running to MSNBC microphones and barking at how evil everything is. At some point we need to actually get in there and start getting the solutions done.
I mean, you're saying there's a plan to replace Obamacare. How come we haven't seen that?
I agree. Why? Why haven't we? I tell you now, but I think there is a plan. I think they're a very simplistic plan. I think as you see major plans dropping off of Obamacare and what it's done and the things that are coming, I think there's an opportunity for us to go back to what the root of Obamacare was. The root of Obamacare was to cover the uninsured.
Which is done as in Iowa, right?
Well, to some extent, right? That's what I'm saying. But you can basically go back and go back to putting the free market back in place and giving people like myself that are done having babies. We don't need prenatal care. You can go back to getting more customized plans and competition across state lines. There's viable choices out there. It's the same thing with Social Security. Let's be honest. That's another issue I get a lot on the stand. A good question to ask me. If you talk about Social Security, there's real options out there that don't involve scaring old people, that involves people my age and your age. Give us a plan. Tell us what it's going to be. If I'm 46 and Social Security, if you're 46 or older, don't even talk about Social Security. Your promise was made. It's there. But if you're 46 or younger, we're going to go back and talk about what Social Security was. It was a supplement. But that's okay. At 46 at our age, I'm going to go back there and say, you know what, I'm big. We're big people. Now tell me what it's going to look like. Give us the parameters. And we'll find a way with our investments and things that we need to do.
So what are you open to in that regard?
Well, I think we're going to live longer. I think what you do is you take the fear out of Social Security, and how you take the fear out of it is quit scaring old people. So go back and reel it back to 45 years old or something, and then go back to things like spending accounts, or go back to privatization, those type of things. Or if you put other incentives in place that incentivizes me as a young person or you as a young person to invest more of your money up front. Maybe you raise the limits on investments that you can invest for your late coming. But at least give us a plan. And if we're going to retire later, then tell us now. Instead of this kind of this uncertainty that floats out there that is just wrapped around fear around old people. Don't do it. So, but again, I go back to the people that are there. Is anyone talking about solutions? No, everybody's just barking. Nobody's talking.
So is among the options that you would look at is raising what is the minimum protects the cap is what 120 118. Would you raise that? So
you know what, all the above. I mean, I think again, be real clear. I don't want the story tomorrow to be Bertrand's going to start screwing with or messing with Social Security. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if you're 40, there's got to be a line in the sand that young people are willing to embrace and to look at all those options. Maybe to means test Social Security for down the road. I mean, those type of things. Those are it's not taboo to talk about it. And I think anything Donald Trump has told us, is exposed, is that he puts these big proposals out there and people get all freaked out and it's like, well, you can't do it that way. Okay, well then you keep bringing it back in. You try to find something that actually can work and is palatable. I think you do the same thing with Social Security. But again, it doesn't come by starting with scaring old people, seniors.
Do you support Senator Grassley's refusal to consider the president's nominee for Supreme Court Justice?
I do. It's his prerogative. I do. I think
It's the senator's prerogative?
I think at this point, as the committee chair, I do think he's showing some courage. I think he's showing courage. I think as a conservative, I stand with that. I also think that, again, we're at a unique point in history with the death of Mr. Scalia, that with the election looming the way it is, the people are going to have an opportunity to speak on this, because we really are talking about maybe 3 justices. I understand the other argument, but it works.
People don't ever
Yeah.
have the right to vote on justices.
But at the end of the day, I think that this is it's not an unprecedented move with what's happening right now, and considering what it's going to mean for the next 50 years of this country, as a conservative, I stand with Chuck. I just do.
We're almost out of time. Was anything else you'd like to add?
You know, the big thing there is I like to just share is number one, I want the endorsement. It means something, because I think Iowans right now are looking for direction. They know who and what I represent. They want to know I'm viable, and I think an endorsement like this would provide that. From the largest county in the district, I'm a developer by trade. I'm a pro-life Catholic. I got a proven record of results. I believe in term limits. And I think the good news about all of that, I don't think there's anybody sitting at this table doesn't believe what I'm saying. And to me, that's the credibility that I'm asking your paper to share with people that don't get an opportunity to sit with me. That's what I'm asking.